Procure-to-Pay is the full commercial and financial cycle of an organizational purchase. Somebody decides the organization needs something, it gets bought, it arrives, the paperwork is checked, and finally it gets paid for. In a mature organization that runs as 8 steps, and the whole of this course is downstream of them. Notice the vertical line in the middle of the diagram. Everything to the left of the purchase order is internal deliberation. Everything to the right is commitment. That single distinction is going to shape almost every architectural decision we make. Step 1 is the requisition. An employee identifies a need. 40 laptops for the new intake, a year of a software subscription, structural steel for a project. They raise a purchase requisition, which is an internal document saying I want to spend this money on this thing for this reason. A requisition has no external force. No vendor has ever seen it. It is a request for permission. Step 2 is approval, routed according to policy, and policy is usually a function of amount and organizational unit. A department head may approve up to 500,000 naira. Above that, a finance director must also approve. Above 10 million, the board's procurement committee signs off. Approval is sequential. Each approver sees the decisions before them, and any approver may reject with a reason. Step 3 is sourcing, and it is optional. Above a threshold, policy may require competitive quotes. Step 4 is where it gets interesting. A buyer converts the approved requisition into a purchase order addressed to a specific vendor. This is the pivotal moment in the process, because a purchase order is a legal offer. When the vendor accepts it, a contract exists. Everything before the PO is internal deliberation. Everything after it is commitment. That is exactly why this transition deserves its own command, its own authorization check, and its own audit record, rather than being an update statement on a status column. Hold on to that thought, because when we get to the domain model in Chapter 5, it is the reason a requisition is not simply a row that gets edited. Step 5. Goods receipt. The goods arrive, or the service is performed, and a receiving clerk records a goods receipt note stating what physically arrived, in what quantity and in what condition. Partial deliveries are normal and must be supported. A purchase order for 40 laptops may be satisfied by a delivery of 25 followed by a delivery of 15. Step 6. The vendor sends an invoice. In a well-run organization, nobody looks at that invoice and decides whether it seems reasonable. Instead, it is subjected to a mechanical test. That test is Step 7, the 3-way match. The system compares 3 documents and asks 3 questions. What did we agree to buy, and at what price? What did we actually receive? And what are we being asked to pay for? If all 3 documents agree within tolerance, the invoice is approved for payment automatically. If they disagree, an exception is raised and a human must investigate. 3-way matching is the single most important financial control in the entire process. It is what stops an organization paying for goods it never received or paying a price it never agreed. Because it matters that much, we will implement it in Chapter 5 as a first-class domain service with its own types and its own tests, not as an if statement buried somewhere in a handler. Step 8 is payment. Approved invoices are gathered into a payment run, allocated against, and settled. And here is the detail that catches people out. A payment may cover several invoices, and an invoice may be settled by several partial payments. The relationship is many-to-many, and modeling it as anything simpler will cause you pain later. That is the process, end to end. In the next lesson we put names to the people who move documents through it, because the actors are what turn this process into a set of authorization rules.